The Dan Yorke State of Mind program is brought to you in part by Lookout Rhode Island and Takeo Comfort Solutions.
Good evening and welcome to my State of Mind. I am Dan Yorke. You're watching this program on Monday, and last week there was a major news story that impacted the political mover-shaker community all through the state. It's the trial of Jeff Britt, a political operative who worked for the Speaker Mattiello campaign back in 2016 and got all jammed up because of it. Tim White's got an excellent synopsis of the judge's verdicts of not guilty on 2 counts that we'll offer you here in a moment. Interestingly enough, the Boston Globe had a headline that I think asked the right question, and that is a coincidental link to our scheduled guest this evening, Lylah Alphonse. She is the new editor of the Boston Globe here in Rhode Island. She and I will talk about that and journalism in Rhode Island and the Globe's role in it coming up momentarily. So let me play that story from Tim White for you so that you get a sense. She and I will have a conversation. By the way, production being what it is and the weather and COVID and all that kind of a thing, you're seeing this for the first time on Monday. We thought you might see it on Friday. Don't worry about it. It's all a new conversation. Here's Tim's story, and we'll continue. Enjoy.
Judge Daniel Procaccini arguably gave Jeff Britt his best gift of the holiday season today, not only clearing him of charges, but declaring the state's money laundering statute unconstitutional. Streaming into court from Florida on Wednesday, Jeff Britt listened as the judge found the evidence against him
woefully short of proving the money laundering offense charged beyond a reasonable doubt, thus requiring a finding of not guilty.
Prosecutors allege Britt had illegally funneled $2,000 to another candidate to fund a pro-Mattiello mailer in 2016.
The takeaway from this case is that Jeff Britt never should have been charged in the first place, and the evidence wasn't there to convict him. The judge got it right.
Britt's attorney, Robert Correnti, says others got away with misconduct, and the Attorney General's office over-prosecuted the case. Do you feel your office overreached on this case?
Yeah, look, I really don't. I mean, I'm comfortable where we landed. Looking back on it, I don't have any regrets. We marshaled the evidence we could. We brought the charges we thought were appropriate. I thought it was important to bring this case. I'm glad that it played out in open court.
Judge Daniel Procaccini found the government's witnesses were not credible, particularly the testimony of Victor Pichette, who claimed Britt gave him cash to help fund the mailer.
This case has not only cost him a lot of time and money, it's sort of put his career on hold for a full year. And I'm hopeful that, with this decision, finding him not guilty on both counts, he's able to get back in the game and resume his career, because this never should have happened to him in the first place.
Good luck to you, Mr. Britt.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Now, to be clear, this is the end of the road on this case. The Attorney General's office cannot appeal the decision. With the Target 12 investigators, Tim White, 12 News.
And so here's a headline from the Boston Globe that I think absolutely asks the right question. And the answer for me is absolutely. This case was completely overcharged by Prita Nerona, and I would suggest you go to our website on WPRO, 997WPRO.com, and you will see the link to a pretty tough conversation the Attorney General and I had on this. More on that as we go over the next week or so, because there's more to be told about that story. In the meantime, speaking of the Boston Globe, you see on your screen the editor for the Rhode Island pages in the Boston Globe online. She is Lylah Alphonse, and she is new to Rhode Island, not new to the Globe, but new to Rhode Island, taking this management position in October. Lylah, thank you for joining me. Great to see you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
The headline, as I referred to, was so on the money. Ed Fitzpatrick's story digs in a little. He finds a professor who supports the Attorney General, but I will tell you that this particular story is quite the political drama and saga in this state. Your paper's work on it gives you what kind of reflection in terms of the profundity of it as it connects to the House Speaker, his loss in this particular election season, and what it says about fairness of the judicial system? You got a take from 36,000 feet on this?
I do. I have a few takes in my back pocket here. One thing I think, though, is that I'm not sure this particular case led to his loss in November. I think it maybe the focus was on him for the big headlines back in October, But this particular case, I think people tend to focus on the amount of money, which makes it, and they look at it, and as Ed reported, a lot of people don't think of $1,000 and think felony. They're thinking, all right, that was a bad decision. So I'm not sure that this particular case was the only thing that tipped the scales for Mattiello in November. But I do think that there's a kind of cumulative effect of all the different scandals, and it did give his opponent another reason to hammer at him. But I'm really struck by the story Ed wrote yesterday that's on the front page this morning about the overreach question. I know a lot of times you throw everything out there and you hope the jury finds a place somewhere in the middle. But in this case, there was no jury. And so it really became an all or nothing question. And I'm not sure that justice was really served.
Meaning, you think that the defendant possibly should have been more accountable? In other words, you think there's...
Yeah, I think there should be some level of repercussion for trying to play off what's essentially a marketing plan as an unpaid endorsement. I think that people do deserve to know who is behind which candidate, but I don't think there was enough of a scale here. You couldn't charge him with 20 years. You couldn't really charge him with 18, give him 18 years. But absolutely nothing, I think, maybe sends the wrong message.
Well, so some would suggest that a bill of a couple $100,000 plus to defend a $1,000 case might be enough pain and loss of a career, and or at least a big blowhole in the side of a career is aggravation enough. Clearly, this Attorney General was seeking the Speaker of the House stop at just one of the players in this case. Is well, it's a debate for another day, but
there's a lot there to talk about, and I think what you've just mentioned, it's all true. I think that your average person, maybe, I'm not sure they look at all of those things as punishment as much as they think of them as part of the process. But there's definitely a huge impact here. Whether it's going to end up being a positive one or a negative one, I think we have to see how it plays out.
I'll suggest to you this: any person who ended up in that hot defendant seat and had to make a decision between an 18-month plea offer to go to jail or to spend money to defend themselves, all of a sudden it would become pretty clear to them what the economics of justice are. Who can so having said that, it's quite the conversation, no doubt. Anyway, listen, the Globe's entry into Rhode Island is of great intrigue, and when we come back, we're gonna talk about that, talk about the competitive issues that go along with journalism, and in the world of defending against fake news, what are things like right now? And there's this other stuff going on, like this COVID thing. You may have heard about it, and a transition in the White House. Stay with us with the Rhode Island editor of the Boston Globe, Lylah Alphonse. We'll be right back. Stay with us on My State of Mind. Appreciate Lylah Alphonse joining us, and we wish her good luck with the Globe in Rhode Island. The more media, the better. The more media, the better. We'll see you tomorrow night and on the radio, weekdays 3 to 6 on WPRO. Good night. Welcome back to My State of Mind. FYI, you're seeing this program on Friday night while we record on Thursday morning in case all heck breaks loose. I will tell you that is something I say, Lylah, often, because our news cycles are no longer 24 and 36 hours. They seem like they're 2 and 3 minutes. Lylah Alphonse is the new editor of the Boston Globe here in Rhode Island, and I think you know what I mean, right? I mean, thank God there's digital that you can update your newspaper on a minute-to-minute basis. If not, there's no way you'd be able to catch up.
No, it's funny. We've shifted from yesterday's news tomorrow to today's news right now, which is both. It has its pluses and its minuses, I think.
Yeah, no doubt. So as you explore the state of Rhode Island, you've got vast editorial and journalistic experience with these worldwide publications that you've been a part of. Now that you're doing this unique project really for the Boston Globe with its international presence, its statewide, market ownership, but its entry into a place that it's only been, an adjunct. Tell me what that feels like to you.
Honestly, it's really exciting. Rhode Island is kind of a phenomenal news state. Dan McGowan, who does a lot of our Rhode Island coverage, has called it the reporter's playground in a lot of ways. There's so much here. And there are some really great media outlets also covering it. And there are consumers who are really dedicated to the state and who are dedicated to staying informed about what's going on around them. So it's a fun place to be in news, I think. Unfortunately, the same thing is happening in Rhode Island as is happening in a lot of different parts of the country. Those great institutions that have been here forever are starting to get hollowed out. And so what I see is an opportunity to prevent a news desert from forming before it actually starts. We're taking our resources and we're covering some of those stories that maybe aren't getting the depth of coverage they deserve. We're providing context. We're talking to people. I really, truly believe that a good story transcends location. And there are lots of good stories in Rhode Island that I think people in other places, whether they have ties to Rhode Island or not, should be finding out about.
Yeah, I agree. But I would take your cool concept there and just suggest we already hit the desert in a lot of ways. That the local stuff, for lack of better reference, the municipal stuff. From small town to small town is already a vast desert wasteland. And for media outlets like WPRO on the radio side, for 12 News and Fox on the television side, for the Globe on the print platform and digital platform, it's very difficult to dig into the stuff that really matters to the taxpayer, to the voter, to the constituent in their own backyard. It's a shame that the economy of media has left us with an empty hole in some ways.
I think so. I'm hoping that we'll have a chance to fill it, and you have to start somewhere. It, I think, would be impossible to come in and immediately fill all the gaps at the municipal level. A lot of people are finding more creative ways to get that. I know that there's some towns where you've got their cable access TV station that are trying to give you synopsises of what happened during the school board meetings, and all that's well and good. My hope is that over time we'll be able to weave ourselves into the fabric of these communities so that we can actually get to these places and cover these things that are important. I may be based in Massachusetts, but my team is in Rhode Island. I'll be in Rhode Island daily. And we're not just covering Providence, even though that's where our office is in the Innovation Center. My hope is that as we expand, we'll be able to fill some of these holes that have developed and really give readers the information and the context that they need.
Yeah, the Valley Breeze that I write for on a weekly basis has long organically filled that gap, but across the country and the region, there just aren't enough publications like that. We can't solve all the world's media problems right now. Tell me what it's like to operate in a very, very traditional and respected news platform, the Boston Globe, being under the constant beatdown of called fake news. What is that like for you?
That's a great question. On the one hand, being under any sort of constant beatdown is exhausting. And I think there are a lot of people, from first responders to teachers, police officers, and journalists, who feel that from one direction or another. I also think that it renews your dedication to what you're doing in some ways. I feel very, very dedicated to finding the real information, for explaining the real things that are out there, for finding the actual facts. It's tough to relitigate things. It's like someone saying the sky is blue and you're saying no it's not, or you're hearing people say no it's not, so you feel like you need to prove it, and that distracts a lot from the actual issues that are going on. But overall, I think what you're seeing are journalists who have really rededicated themselves to old-fashioned journalistic ethics and values. There will always be different parts of the media that take a different tact with that. I mean, the media is not a monolith. What you see on the big cable news networks, which I think are what most people are referring to when they say the mainstream media, the big networks, the big publications, the New York Times, the Washington Post, they've got business considerations, of course. And I think over time, certainly over the last 10 to 20 years, there's been a pivot towards confirmation rather than information, giving your audience what they expect, what they want to hear, confirming what they already believe. And I think that's magnified when you're talking about sound bites and emotions. But I think there are a lot of journalists out there that are really, really dedicated to figuring out the truth, to shining a light into the darkness, to being the eyes and the ears of the people in rooms where they're not normally allowed to go.
All right, that's a cool answer. When we come back, I want to hear what you think about what it's like to do this work in COVID, because I'm very concerned that less so in Mass, but more so in Rhode Island, since you're covering it, we have now a one-person form of government and a very subordinate reaction from media in general. We'll talk about it when we get back with Lylah Alphonse, the editor of the Boston Globe in Rhode Island. Stay with us. With Lylah Alphonse, she is the editor of the Boston Globe here in Rhode Island. You know, I've been very concerned that Gina Raimondo is a one-person show right now. Our General Assembly literally can be found on a milk carton. They went away, gave executive authority, and never came back. Now they're doing a little bit here, a little bit there, but oversight is negligible. And I really feel that we're governing from the stage of the Veterans Auditorium. Listen, this governor did a pretty good job of lowering the curve early on, but it has been business infusion mishap. There have been a lot of other things that have just gone uncontested. She's picked a fight now with the superintendents, asking them to look in the mirror with very little pushback from a journalistic or editorial point of view. And there's a lot of subordinate behavior. You know, she says it, we report it. Tell me about what COVID does to journalism and how we've been doing here in Rhode Island.
Well, with respect to what the governor's doing, I think you're seeing a bit of the downside of the classic journalism model, which is when journalism veers towards stenography and you just write down what happened and put it out there without evaluating it, without providing analysis, without providing context, because there's such a concern that doing so will indicate bias. So that's the kind of I don't know, it's not quite a false equivalency, but it's this desire to avoid bias that ends up actually stripping information and context out of your reporting. And I think that's a tough line.
Let me tell you something. I don't think anyone said it any better. Thank you for saying that, because it's exactly what it is. She says it, we write it, we report it, and it just streams through. And under an emergency situation, you know, we tend to do that in media and in journalism simply because the safety aspect overrides the scrutiny, doesn't it?
I think that's true. And then I think that has a ripple effect. I think that what you end up seeing is in an emergency situation, people who are hesitant to push back because they don't want to undermine authority, because at some point you do depend on that authority to get the job done. You need people to listen, to keep their masks on, to wash their hands, to avoid gathering. But there's a tipping point in there somewhere. And I think at some point, Rhode Island maybe reached it. And one reason why we were able to keep the curve down so low in the beginning and are not doing it now is people are sick of being told what to do. I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I'm saying that I think it is. As a parent, I see that. You see, if you've had teenagers, you see this happen all the time. After a point, someone goes, well, I've been doing it this long. I'm sick of it. I want to do what I want to do. So there's no good answer here. I think that governing by edict is one thing, and there are people who are encouraging her to do that. And then there are other people who are saying that, no, we really need a consensus and we need to move forward. There are still basic things that are really important in a pandemic: the masking, the avoiding gathering, the not traveling, the washing your hands. That doesn't change. But I think what's changing is now those smart pieces of advice, those smart orders, are getting mixed up with the kind of rebellion against the authority, and that's causing more problems now. So you need to change. You can't just do things the way you've always done them.
Amen. And so never to suggest to the editor what the editor may want to see in her own publication, but your insight on this, I hope, leads to what has been a completely, in the print media, has been a completely missed conversation, that which you just had, which is to talk about whether the governor would be more effective asking for cooperation rather than demanding it, scolding and establishing a phrase, follow the rules, that comes out as easily as breathing air, I think has had a lot to do with this curve going the wrong direction. And this governor seems to be completely oblivious to that, or if she's had that advice, doesn't want to hear it. Anyway, I think we're out of time, and I hope to make you a regular partner in conversation on this. It was insightful. Congratulations on your role.
Thank you.
Rhode Island, and we'll look forward to more market growth from that paper, because God knows we need it. Thanks, and
thank you so much. I have a great team. We're happy to be doing what we're doing.
Final word when we come back. Stay with us. Appreciate Lylah Alphonse joining us, and we wish her good luck with the Globe in Rhode Island. The more media, the better. The more media, the better. We'll see you tomorrow night, and on the radio, weekdays 3 to 6 on WPRO. Good night.